Yeah, you never would have thought
Gotcha.
that $40 headphones from China when I was traveling have been like my go-to podcast headphones.
Hey, it doesn't have to be super fancy. Sometimes it just works, you know?
I bought this $25 Amazon iPhone watch, and this thing rules. It does everything the Apple Watch does.
Hey.
So you never know.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining us. I guess we'll just get right into it. We got Mr. Pete Stetina on the podcast today. Really appreciate you jumping on with us for a little bit, man. Not sure if you've heard of the podcast before, but we talk about all things cycling, but we talk about a lot of things on the periphery too. So we're definitely excited over here to dig into your story.
Well, that sounds like my kind of podcast then, because yeah, we're all people that ride bikes, not the other way around. Not
Yeah.
Exactly, man. Exactly. So where are you at right now? We back home? Where are we at currently?
Yep, I am in the heat wave of Northern California, North Bay of San Francisco, Santa Rosa, and yeah, just taking the foot off the gas for a week here after Unbound. It was kind of like the whole spring build up through Unbound and the big show, and now the summer races are coming in soon, but this is kind of the moment to just like reset for a week. So
Oh, absolutely.
It's great.
baby duty and appointments and being a parent, which is actually harder.
Yeah.
Recalibrating. It's significantly harder. I would agree with you on that. I have a 2 and a 4 year old, and life is full gas. How many do you have?
I got 2-year-old twins. So
Oh, wow.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
it's been fun, but it's a lot of work. Yeah, I was, we didn't have our nanny help on Monday after Unbound, so I got home, Sunday at 11 p.m. and Monday was like 12 hours, kid, like
Yeah.
toddler twins, and I would have rather raced a second Unbound.
Oh, fully, man. That's why I don't know. I think it almost makes you more resilient as a bike racer in some ways, if you can get yourself out there to do it. Because mentally, once you've been through the intensity of little toddlers, it's like you can put yourself through any sort of pain
Anything.
cave, you know? Yeah, I bring this up every once in a while because I think it's funny. Like as a parent, I remember going into some of those first doctor's appointments and like not fully realizing that you could have twins. Like we didn't have twins, but just that full realization that that could be a possibility. I was like, oh dear Lord.
I think you probably have it. It's just as hard but different. Everyone's saying like, "Oh my God, twins are so hard." And it's everything I think is twice as hard in the moment of like each
Hmm.
step. But the thing is, we're doing each like life achievement at the same time, right? So whether it's nursing or bottle feeding or toddling, whatever it is, versus you have a 2 and a 4-year-old, you have two kids on completely different wavelengths. So you're having to juggle like
Yeah.
preschool and toddler right now, that's another
Hmm.
juggle. Like at least we're dealing with the same thing. It's just twice as much of it.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. We're splitting hairs, man. It's probably just crazy either way. I mean, where's really that line at? But that's awesome, man. I did want to talk about some of that family stuff, and we'll get deeper into that and how that integrates with your super busy race schedule and all that.
How do you do it all?
One of the more kind of topical things I wanted to bring up. Obviously, we just got done with Unbound.
Hmm.
Lots of eyeballs on Unbound. You've seen such a massive transformation in the scene as a whole, not to mention that race in particular. I know that this, just looking at what had happened this year, it shook up what everybody thought was going to happen,
Hmm.
and things turned out a totally different way. Maybe walk us through kind of a little bit of your experience and some details on that, but then how things completely changed this year and like what you saw a difference in.
In terms of Unbound specifically, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just as far as that event in particular.
Nah, I think it's just becoming I mean, it always has been like the most highlighted race, right? The biggest race in all of
Hmm.
gravel. And um it's just this continuing factor of you have this race that's getting more notoriety, and you can literally make a career off of one day. So anyone who fancies himself a professional racer really wants to make their mark there. I mean, that's all, everything's on the
Yeah.
line on one day. And so
Mm.
I think you're just seeing that progression of professionalization in sport, meaning pure high performance, cutthroat tactics, winning at all costs, which is fine. But in my mind this year, more than any other, and this is not a negative at all, it's just I fully expected it. It just felt like a world tour race. I think
Mhm.
it felt exactly like a world tour spring classic. The Peloton dynamics. I think that the nail, that's not the right word, but I think the leading factor that led to that final change to really make it feel that way was such a separate start, because I
Mm.
was actually talking with Keegan in the past, and I think it's pretty, evident that Keegan was frustrated by some of the tactics, and being a favorite, he was so marked all day by so many riders, but that's like a road race, and um
Yeah.
and the fact is, it, in the old days, right? People who can't see, I'm using my air quotes, but in the old days of Unbound, it was with the mass start, the fastest riders in the front were almost forced to go really hard from the gun to create that separation, right? To create the selection, to make it safer, to create like the lead group. But
Hmm.
now that there's 30 minutes back to the women, and or 10 minutes to the women and 30 minutes to the age group categories, that worry wasn't there. So it was literally just a pro field, which was, you know, I guess safer already, but also, everyone's there and everyone is such an elite racer. You're not just going to create that selection and pare it down that fast. So that's why it led
Mm.
to that more of a group dynamic you probably saw in terms of like that accordion effect and sometimes negative racing and more tactical, which honestly I was fine with it. I think, I mean, that was the game, and I think Lachlan obviously knows how to play that game, as does Chad Haga, and they
Sure.
made their moves at opportune times. And I think you saw some of the mountain bikers a little bit frustrated with again, air quotes, the negative racing, but it was actually just
Mm.
a tactical race in my mind.
Hmm. Yeah. So people are just sharpening those tactics. And I guess my question is, obviously you have a lot bigger teams when it comes to, traditional, like you're saying, classic road races and stuff like that. What's that differentiation? Is that dynamic still kind of going on, but just in like more of like who's friends with who because there aren't big teams? Or is it just like everybody's gotten to know people so well that you kind of, I don't know, you play games based off of how you know them? Like, what's the difference
Right.
between those two kind of things, I guess? And I mean, I guess because I've only done a handful of gravel events myself, I know that the dirt and the terrain obviously is its own character in this. You can't exactly do the same things that you do on smooth road. So what are some of those, like, what do you see as the main difference between those?
Um, I mean, the answer is bluntly like yes to all of what you just said, but I mean, I think it's
Moving on.
um there are teams here now. Like it was clear, like the Pa Normal team with Chad Haga and the Norwegian guy, um, and the guy who was third. They were working together all day. Like, and it
Yeah.
was road race tactics. Like there was a moment when Lockie and Chad were up the road after aid two, and I finally got away from Keegan and Matt Beers and everyone, and it was me and four Europeans with the Pa Normal guy, and he was just sitting on. He was like, "No, I'm not pulling. I have Chad at 2 minutes up the road."
Sure.
Mm.
So we were like, okay, if we continue like this, we're just hauling them back into the race. And so that's already happening with the teams. And then as far as small, privateers or one-man teams collaborating together, it really is just opportune moments. I mean, there are moments where, I'll link up with Keegan, for example, and it's in our advantage to just go hard together to put everyone else on the
Mhm.
back foot. I guess the race is now kind of made up of these like very short-lived allegiances. But then as soon as like that goal that you both have, are together on disintegrates, that's out the window and you start again, it's just a reset. So, um, yeah, I mean, that's all just that's happening. I still think gravel isn't going to be a fully like team dedicated sport. Just because, like you saw, like with Mohoric coming with all his, his Bahrain teammates, from the World Tour, is one of them flatted at mile 30, the next one flatted at mile 40, and then Mohoric was alone, and then he flatted. So it's like,
yeah, and on that team, like when they put that much, money and focus into something, and then you have these factors that take such a large chunk of the group out, it's like, is it even, necessarily worth it for these teams? So unless you're focused strictly on gravel, and I think, I don't know, I guess you could answer this, but it makes more sense to have these small, maybe 1 to 2 guys that are just specifically gravel guys versus, building these massive teams. It doesn't
Probably
or
doesn't
you
make much
literally
sense.
need such a big team and you just go into every race realizing that like
Yeah.
you're going to lose 50% of your riders to some mishap, because gravel is so much more about
Sure.
damage control and equipment,
Right.
than road racing. But no, I mean, it's definitely taking effect. Even at Mid-South, we had the Trek guys of Torbjorn and Finsterwald trying to 1-2 us, and so
Yeah.
and they're two of the strongest riders in the group. They're always top teners. So, when that happens, it makes life more complicated. And then you might see, for example, me go to a Canyon rider who we're not necessarily teammates, but we share the bike sponsor in Canyon, and we kind of have to have a conversation of like, I would rather see you win than them, and he would rather see me win
Yeah.
than the Trek guys. So then we will be like, all right, like, let's become a two-man team for the remainder of this race to combat
Sure.
that. But it really is, it's not like it's a predetermined tactic.
Yeah, there's no big group meeting to discuss how everything is going to play out. Too many factors.
This evolution that you've seen kind of happen of where everything has evolved to, a lot more pros lining up. Is it, in your opinion, a positive thing, the way that the racing has changed and evolved, or yes and no?
I don't know if I can say it's positive or negative, but it's a natural evolution. I mean, when careers are made and money is made off of this, people will do anything to better themselves, and there's a entire group of riders who, maybe they didn't quite make it there in the road, or, they were not doing well in mountain bikes, but they had more of an endurance specialty set that they didn't know of, or whatever it is, right? But now that there's a career to be made here, it was naturally gonna, it's the fastest growing discipline in the sport. Like, people are gonna go all in. And I mean, it just depends on how one approaches it. I mean, I think now we are just seeing some riders who are only in it for the result and to leave, and that's fine, and that's how they find enjoyment in their career. But that's also not why I came to this. Like, I saw that magic recipe of why gravel started to explode in 2019, and and why it was this fresh breath. And it is that balance, and which is what drew me to it, because I was just living that high performance road world. Um, and so realizing what made it special and why it was such a fresh breath, I've kind of had to use that as my North Star, realizing like that is the bones of this. And again, I can't tell anyone they're wrong for just focusing on a performance only aspect. That's up to them. But I would tell them, if they asked for my professional opinion as like Coach Pete, I would say, like, results are always just short. Like, someone's going to be the new winner of Unbound every year. So it's what you do with that. It's how you carry yourself that you can set yourself up for your entire career beyond just bikes.
Sure.
I think using a result is a way to leverage who you truly are as an athlete, and what you want to stand for and what you want to bring to the table. So if you just want to win and go home, I mean, does that really resonate? Because gravel isn't about fans the same as like road cycling is in Europe. Gravel is mostly it's a mass participation sport. Like, I mean, I'm assuming if you're going to Unbound, you're going to look at like, hey, what is Pete doing to his bike so that maybe what tires is he running? So I can try and mimic that or give myself the best chance of success. Like, it's not about
Sure.
hidden secrets. It's about openness to be all in this together. At least that's how I
Yeah.
approach it.
And it's such a special thing. Me coming into this, Aaron's done quite a bit of gravel riding. I've done a couple of local events myself. I did Wild West this year, did Flannel Grind, just some like smaller events, nothing super competitive yet, but just seeing the community around it. And I'm sure that's probably what attracted you to it as well, probably. And you've probably seen evolution in big time. I'm sure some of those early ones didn't have a whole lot of like the food, the music, the everything else that's involved with it that makes it this really strong community piece, and that you get to share all these war stories afterwards about how the day went. And yeah, it's a special mixture of things. And from someone who's kind of a newer participant in at least just the gravel scene, yeah, that's a special thing that you don't really find elsewhere. And even though there are a lot of these guys that are taking it so seriously, there are so many people that make these events continue that are just there to get through the day, to experience it. And that kind of reminds me, I've seen a lot of feedback as far as what happened this year with Unbound, and a lot of people said it was one of the most fun years. Even like the high-end competitors, they said it was just like an awesome race, even though a lot of these people got way worse results. And these are some of the top, some of your top competitors that were making posts about, hey, this year was awesome. Like, I didn't finish nearly as well as I wanted to, but like, this was great. This was great. This was great. Is that what your experience was? I know you had some difficulties towards the end of the race, and I don't think we really talked about how your race went, but is that what you experienced as well this year?
100%. I think this Unbound was free from drama and bickering that it's dealt with in the past. And I think everyone kind of knew what the game was, so to speak, this year. Like, Unbound, at least for the pro field, is it's just about performance, like it's at the end of the day, like, it's about doing the best you can and knowing that this is a race. Like, this is not, at least for the pros in the front, like, this is not the good old kumbaya gravel that we used to read about,
Sure. Those days are over.
At Unbound, they are. Those days
Yeah.
are not over in gravel, and that's why I go about building my schedule to kind of fill both cups, right? You'll see some
Sure.
more like local, grassroots events, and then when I show up to a lifetime race where it's obviously just a race and my peers are just focused on the race, I need to do that as well. So how do I mentally balance that? It's a blend of, grassroots events where I can just sit around and enjoy it versus like, okay, Unbound, we're here for performance. But, Unbound across the board this year, like, it was really nice to see that high performance side did not actually detract from everybody else's experience. I mean,
Right.
I think you could still sense that in the air. Like, people were just excited. I was getting pulled aside in the expo of like, this is my first Unbound, blah, like,
So cool.
do you have a tip for me or whatever it is, so people were still there. And maybe I don't know, actually, I just haven't thought of it till now, but maybe it was actually due to the separate starts and Lifetime really actually doing a good job of just delineating it. It's like, really like, this is the pro stuff, there's the pro men, there's the pro women starting, and then everybody else. And it kind of got rid of that cluster at the beginning where people get pulled into the
Yeah.
pro race when maybe they don't want to be there or they shouldn't be there, and they get in over their heads, and it makes for a harder day for them than they expected and all of that. So yeah, I think
So
it
cool.
was really well.
Sorry, I interrupted. No, I was just going to say, like, you talking about, like, that's what's so unique about the gravel community. Like, I ride on the road as well, but I'm never going to be at an event with Tadej Pogačar. Like, it's never going to happen. But, like, for people coming into the racing and getting to meet you and the accessibility, like, there's just such a special kind of community feel. And I was curious, like, is it your love of that which kind of inspired you to start Pay Dirt? Like, can you go into Pay Dirt a little bit? Because it was just last month, a few weeks ago, yeah?
2.5 weeks
Yeah.
ago. No, it's a labor of love. Pay Dirt
Yeah.
is, yeah, it's not about like an income or anything. It's just, a way to give back, and do a project that's I'm excited about. It started as a road fondo when I was a road pro in the World Tour up in the Tahoe area where I lived. And as I slowly transitioned off road, I just started exploring more and more trails down in the Carson area. And it was like, oh my God, this is an untouched frontier for gravel riding. And it's a very unique race in that it's not just your start and finish. We have these long time segments, and it's about how we promote that and how we almost through the format of the event force people to race each other and hit it when they want to, but then also you're forced to like take a breath and regroup. And I think it's been built in a way where it's even if you're trying to get a good result, you kind of have to do that, which is really interesting.
Good.
So it's not that every event should be like, there's plenty of start to finish, go, like that's your typical race, and that's fine. And that's what my job is, but for once a year or a couple times a year, you can do it different. And I think it's proven now for 3 years that it is that fresh breath. And I mean, I would love to have both of you out there and experience it. I have multiple
Sure.
pros and age groupers, enthusiasts just tell me that it's their favorite event of the year.
We have a lot of
I've heard that as
we have a
well.
lot.
Well, then come,
friends.
you got to
Yeah.
come.
Yeah, I was almost going to try to make it this year. Had a few other things going on, but next year we'll definitely make it out there. I heard wonderful things about it this year and last year. So it sounds like you've got a great thing going there. It is cool to see. Like you're a Northern California person. We've got Lachlan actually up kind of.
Where are you guys based? Sorry, I don't know.
So we're
Sacramento.
Sacramento area.
Okay, you're right up the road.
Yeah. So we're our actual studio's in Gold River. I live in Roseville, not too far from here. But yeah, we're all local NorCal folks. So yeah, not far. We'll definitely make it. We'll definitely make it there next year for sure. And I was gonna say too. I think you did you did the Grasshopper this year as well. What was? Yeah, what town was that one that was in? That was I think it was it right after Pay Dirt or before?
Oh yeah, up in Ukiah, Mendocino County.
Yes. Yeah. That one looked gorgeous as well. I'm just getting familiarized with all the different local series, and that Grasshopper series seems great.
The Hoppers, they're the oldest series in gravel, period. I mean, they've been going for 27 years. Before the term gravel existed, they were just adventure rides. And, they've obviously exploded and grown and have sponsorship now, but there's still just like a very core local feeling. And it's great to, even if you're up in the Sac Central Valley area, to be able to, wake up in your own bed and drive in for something, or just come in one night before and do a fun local thing. And it's going to be a hard race because our talent pool in Northern California is so deep. It's a hotbed of cycling. But so as a professional, you can get a really, really hard race out of it, which is that's the best training you can do. But also, you finish and there's just coolers of beers and soft drinks and taco trucks, and you're just hanging out with your friends that your local bike community. So highly recommend it. You guys got to get yourselves out to a hopper at some point.
Absolutely. When those events come around, definitely for your event, we'll make it out there. I'll hit you up before, and we'll make sure to link up there. I'm trying to do more stuff with this podcast to where I've done a few local events, and we just bring out our whole setup, and we just like set up and do like a actual ad event, and you can kind of feel the environment when you're at an event. And so it's kind of cool doing a podcast because it's like this little time capsule, and people get to listen, and they hear the like stuff that's going on and the excitement, and you might get someone else that pops in like halfway through your like recording, which like makes it a little more hectic, but it's fun. You kind of get the energy and the environment. So I'll let you know, and we'll be out there next year for sure. I did want to ask you a quick question in regards to kind of that parenting side that we touched on earlier. How has like obviously the raising of kids, how has that affected like your priorities through the year? And does that what does that look like as far as, I mean, obviously I know as a father to myself, I know it changes everything, but how has that switch taken place, and like how do you prioritize things for the year? Is it just a lot more sharper schedule, or what's the main
Tell us
differences?
about that elusive life work balance.
Yeah, we'll never reach it, but we keep
nobody has it.
we keep trying.
The code. Yeah, I mean, my whole career, I had, teammates, in the world tour and everything, that once they become a parent, it kind of goes like, one way or the other, in that like they're kind of checked out and they feel guilty for leaving all the time, and they want to be home and watch their kids grow and be there for every moment. Or you'll see other riders, double down, almost like this inherent primitive instinct to like provide for them,
Sure.
like I need to provide. And I think I'm a little bit in that boat, in that like if I'm leaving, even more now than ever, it's like I need to make it count. Like I'm
Sure.
not going to just show up to Unbound to puff around and, just do the friendly things. Like I need to do everything right, because it's a job, like this is my job. And
Sure.
I can't justify just leaving, especially when I travel so much. Like, but then in terms of that work-life balance, it's like, yeah, I get home and you have to find a way to, it's almost like a bit of guilt, I guess. Like you're like, I have been like, like you're working. My job is bikes, right? Like it's training, it's all these things and promotion and media, but you almost feel like a little bit guilty of like, okay, daddy has been playing bikes because my job is play, which that's a dream, right? But I get home and it's like, okay, like put me in, coach. Like I gotta relieve
Yeah.
mama, and which is, the Monday after Unbound, it's brutal, but it's
Yeah.
also what you want to be doing. Like you feel like you gotta, right those scales a little bit.
Yeah.
So you don't bring them with you when you're racing?
Sometimes, and it's been
I was gonna say the thing that actually spawned this whole thing was I watched some of those early videos, the Lifetime series. They've done a great job. I got to give them applause on just like how much effort they put in. But watching the sea otter footage. Here's the only reason that really resonates for me is because I did sea otter for the first year this year, and brought my 2 and 4-year-old, my wife, who's not necessarily so into cycling in general. And we had a hotel. We weren't even camping on site. So that even adds more. It's like, how do we even logistically get this whole caravan over to the event without everybody's brain exploding and everybody losing their shit? So that's kind of what spawned my interest in, I've always been interested in speaking to you, but that one really resonated with me. I was like, I can feel this moment right here. And just, I'm sure all the stuff
it was such a bad idea. Like, I'll tell you right now, like it was, I think it's been like my wife's mom, she kind of said it. So she's like, a lot of people like, why the hell are you bringing your kids to this thing? Like, it's a mess, and it's taking away from your race. But I think we're just scraping for like a sense of normalcy, like parenting and just always at home is such a hard thing. We're just like, we need to do something. So it was like, oh yeah, it's a camping thing. It's family friendly. You see the little Groms on their Strider bikes all over the Sea Otter venue.
Yeah.
We thought it was a good idea. What Lifetime didn't put in there is that, I have that big fancy van. So, I sleep in that. I do all my racing out of that. You can't fit a crib in there. Like it's not really set up for 4 people, especially toddlers. So, we had one of those stupid REI 8x8 tents, and we like put their cribs in there. We put an air mattress in there. So we were literally camping, like tent camping before this
Yeah.
Grand Prix race. And it got so cold. I think it was like down to 40 degrees at night, and it was like misting.
Freezing your children.
Yeah, they're like still bottle feeding. They're way too young to be doing that. And,
Yeah.
so it's like the night of the race, and, we go to bed, and the first night was okay because it was all of us in the tent. But without my body heat, I think like the idea was, okay, night of the race, dad, go in the van. You got to wake up early. We don't want you waking the kids. Mama will just sleep in the tent with the kids. All good. At like midnight, I hear them crying, and I open the van door, and my wife, bless her heart, she's like rocking them to keep them warm, and she doesn't want to come in the van, but they're too cold, they can't sleep, and so like she's just sitting there at midnight, like cradling them and trying to, and I said, what the hell are you doing? Like, get in here, and like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. And so we somehow like rig one crib up like in the van floor somehow, and then the other one we have like this fancy mattress because they were so young, like they can't, if they flip they might suffocate, so we have like this breathable mattress. And so we literally put it between us on this bed, this loft bed, and so we were both sleeping like mummies on our back with like an inch to falling off on either side, and our daughter between us, and you couldn't roll over for the whole night. And I got, I think I got like 3 hours of sleep the night before Sea Otter, and obviously I sucked. And then we all got sick. And so,
oh no.
And then we had the brilliant idea that we do it again. Like we live in Colorado, right? Or sorry, we grew up in Colorado. I'm from the Boulder area. My wife's from the Boulder area. And so for Leadville Steamboat Week, we always kind of go home. Like, hey, like my wife can come out. Like we'll stay at her folks' place. We'll visit my mom. All these things. Make a family reunion out of going to the bike race. Yeah, but now that everyone has littles and cousins, and it's just toddler mayhem because we're all of that age, like, leading up to Leadville, like everyone had hand, foot, and mouth disease. Like, so I was dealing with that. And like you can't promote that and just complain on social media because social media sucks and people are
they'll run with whatever.
But it's like, so I think we kind of realized this year, it's like, you know what, like stop trying to bring the family into the lead up of the race. And you can learn this. Like, this is my tip to you is like pre-race, you're nervous, you're trying to do everything right because, whether you're a pro or you signed up and you paid this money and it's a goal for you. And now the wife and the kids will come in like just for the race, like the day before, so they can't get me sick and I can focus on my build up and all that. And then we'll do the family reunion and the hangout and the fun after, whether you're going to go camping on the drive home. So we're back
then
and loading
get you sick.
Exactly.
After
it doesn't matter
after.
So we're back end loading instead of front end loading races this year. So this year, like I'll go to Leadville, stay there, go to SBT. They will fly in just for SBT, and then we'll hang out with family for a week afterwards. So we're learning by experience on that one.
Yeah, the van's hard. I'm in the kind of middle stages of renovating an RV right now.
Flip it. Doing a little van.
It's a little smaller, but it still has like full bathroom, like beds, like areas for the kids to go in. And our kids will hopefully within the next, 2 and 4 is a little still difficult, but as they get, next couple years, we'll be heading out to Sea Otter and races and events with that thing. So
awesome.
It'll get a little easier. But yeah, that van life. Everybody I know who's really all about that. It's like none of them have kids. It is very like it's okay if it's you and maybe your wife, but like you add kids in there and it's like it was already small, and now you're living outside the van pretty much. So.
Yep.
Struggle, man. I didn't know that backstory, but that really resonates with me. I can feel that struggle, man.
I know. It's all just at this point, the van is just a gateway to the RV life that you never thought you'd want to do. But I will be driving that 30-footer down the highway in a year.
You never think you're going to get there, but then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, it's got all the amenities. It's real nice.
Our neighbor, me and my partner, over in Carmichael, our neighbor has the bus. I mean, it looks like a Greyhound bus, and he's like, "Come on over, check it out." And we're like, "This thing is incredible." And you're always like, "Oh God, look at this, just consumer, the most massive carbon footprint." But like, get it.
I know. It's
Hotels are so expensive, like all those things. It's kind of
yeah. I do like it. I like, it's like you're moving apartment, and yeah, the van is great for my racing. It's like a little, like, as I said, an apartment for my job specifically. But I think if I keep racing long enough, I'll just be like I'll be Robert De Niro in like Meet the Fockers with the big RV and like the captain's hat, the boat hat, and hop on.
I could see you rocking that captain's hat with the mustache and everything, man. It'd be a good
for
look.
Sure.
Gray old grizzled Pete going to the bike races in the whale.
You'll be Captain Pete at that point,
So what is next on the docket for you? What do you kind of have your sights set on, or what's coming up?
Speaking of van life, next race is Oregon Trail, which is
There you go.
the most fun week of the year. It's summer camp for bike racers. It's a gravel stage race where you race campsite to campsite. So the perk of the van, is that, I got Big Tall Wayne with me, my best bud, and he'll drive to the next campsite, go for a mountain bike ride himself. I'll race over there, dial in the bike. We'll be hanging out at camp with a couple other 100 like-minded people and do it for 5 days. And now it's part of this Gravel Earth series, which is even more prestigious. So that's in a couple weeks. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I've looked at that one a couple times. My wife's from Oregon, so she's
wow.
about an hour outside of Portland. So
okay,
yeah, I've thought about going to that event. I didn't understand, and maybe you can bring some light to this, but I didn't understand the price. It seems like it's an all-inclusive event.
Yeah.
Because I looked to like register, and I was like, you're used to seeing some high prices on gravel events, but then it was like, I don't know, it was like $1,500 or something. I forget what the pricing was. Don't quote me on that. But it's like an all-inclusive event. Is that how they're
yeah, and that like I said, you're literally going campsite to campsite. So how you can either have an RV if you have a partner or a friend driving it, if you wanted to bring the family out and, they want to go for hikes or something while you're doing the race. But yes, how it is priced is it is a sticker shock at first, but when you actually realize what you get, it's 5 full racing days. So beyond, because a lot of these races, unfortunately, it's like, you spend, $150 and you get like a number plate and a meal ticket. And it's the insurances and all that. Like as an event promoter, I know like it's not cheap to put on a bike race. But what Chad and company do is literally they give you a tent, you get this big old box, this plastic tub that you can put your pillow, your toiletries, your casual clothes, your music, whatever you want in there, some spare tires. And they transfer all your stuff and set up your tent for you. So when you show up, your tent's there, your box is there. They have an entire truck of like 10 showers with hot water. They have a snack shack that's open as soon as you finish, that's sandwiches and chips and drinks and all that. They have a wet bar rolling with whiskey and beer all night if that's your vibe, because you're at camp.
Very cool.
There's an entire dinner buffet every night. There's a breakfast buffet pre-race every morning, coffee. And then they just have like a bunch of games and hammocks set up and axe throwing or whatever it is, BB guns.
Yeah.
There's a river that you dip in at one of the cooler campsites, so it's literally it is all inclusive. So when you break that down, it's like,
oh yeah, no, that sounds great.
It's actually a steal because you don't have to think about lodging. You don't have to think about meals, like,
God, I can't imagine the amount of planning that goes into that, the amount of coordinating. I mean, holy moly.
Oregonians know they're camping though, they're dialed. It's from what's that episode, Portlandia? It's like, get the gear. Yeah. They're like, they know their gear, man.
Yeah.
They know the gear. Yeah.
Yes. There's a reason why the REIs, that's like their church out there, man.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, Chad Sperry and team are they're very experienced. If you follow road racing, they used to put on the Cascade Classic for 20 something years, which was a UCI stage race and all that. He's been the logistics behind Tour of Utahs and stuff. He knows how to put on races. But this is a passion race for him. And I have a rule that I have to do one of Chad's races every year, whether it's the Cascade race or this, Oregon Trail. And he's out there literally clearing trees and doing like trail work before his
Wow.
races. Like he goes above and beyond.
That's remarkable. That's kind of what I feel like a lot of these event promoters, they're walking the walk. I mean, at least I know in Northern California, it's a lot of these guys they're not just putting on events to like make money out of. Obviously, you know that more than anyone. Like it's a labor of love, and these guys want to put on an event that they would like to do equally, and half the time they are doing them, So that is a cool part about this whole gravel scene and a lot of the events locally in Northern California as well. I know they're put on by just really passionate people that want to have badass things to do, and events for people to go to.
Exactly. So
very cool, man. Yeah, we're getting close to the end here. I did want to see, I don't see you doing, are you primarily, you're only doing gravel these days, or do you touch any road bike stuff to this day anymore? Or
the only road race I did was Levi's Gran Fondo race when they made it a pro race this year, which was amazing. I think they're going to bring it back next year. It's my local Sonoma County race, but
Sure.
I love road racing. But yeah, I mean, it's technically like a team space, and you need to be on a team and registered. And I got more than I can bite off with gravel these days.
Right.
And the cool thing with gravel is it's such a spectrum. You do have races that are almost more road racy, which is something like Steamboat, for example, that are smoother terrain. And then you have something that's super chunky, that's almost mountain bikey, and everything in between. So if I feel the need for more road bike stuff, I'll choose an easier course.
Yeah.
How does that work too? So do you have a manager, an agent? Like, do you get to decide which races that you want to do? How does that work?
No, the power of, being a privateer is I'm my own boss. This is my own business. So I do it all. I am my own agent. I negotiate the contracts. I make the schedule. I do the budget, the payroll, Wayne's salary, all of it. The profit loss statements at the end of the year. Like I treat it like a full-on business.
Sure.
Yeah, it's literally a pro team of one.
Yeah.
But yeah, the logistics, they're hard because, you need the budget of driving versus flying, the Airbnbs, all this stuff. What is cost effective, but you also balance it with personal desire and, what ticks the box for sponsors. There definitely is sponsor pressure sometimes, like whether Canyon comes to me and they're like, hey, we really care about this race. Like we are going to title sponsor this Belgian waffle ride. Like, can you be there? And, of course the answer is yes, when someone comes like that, but it's very few and far between with those hard requests. And it's more, they trust me at this point, because that's kind of what I staked my claim on, years ago. And I've shown that like I'll find things that resonate for them.
Yeah. And how many years have you been with been working with them?
Since I went to gravel. So the end of 2019, started 2020. Yeah, they were pretty much the first company I talked to as I had this idea in my mind of being a pro gravel racer. And a lot of companies were like, that's silly. That's a joke. And Canyon was like, hell yeah, let's do that. And it's now everyone's trying to copy it, which is it's funny. It's great. So
I'm curious. Our other podcasts, I always like to take it way back.
Like,
were you one of those? Were you one of those kids that had parents that were cyclists? Were you an athlete coming from another field? What kind of brought you to cycling? And was it kind of that immediate love? The first second you got on a bike, or how was that for you?
Journey to Peloton.
I think a lot of people who know my story, this will be regurgitating, but it's my dad was a pro in the 70s and 80s, early 80s. My uncle was a pro. They were kind of like the dynamic brother duo when road racing was just coming up. If like races like the Coors Classic back in the day, and Team 711. But it's different in that I was never pushed into it. Like I think now people are like, oh yeah, duh. But my dad, once he stopped racing, like just as I was born, all his leaders' jerseys and trophies, they were in a duffel bag in the closet. Like you didn't know, like we went for fun bike rides as a kid. And every summer, like the Tour de France would be on TV when we were at the beach, you know, in the summer, and that was it.
Sure.
But I think it was obvious that I was always going to be a professional athlete, like whether it was running or soccer. It was like I was the kid that was moving, just hyper competitive. So I found the sport on my own, just being based in Boulder, you know, one of the other hotbeds of cycling in the US. It's an easy sport to find. And um, then once I was hooked, you know, I think a little bit of it was like, oh, I'm good at this. But then I had that family background to rely on for parts and instruction and getting to race.
I was going to say, did your dad like really step in at that point? Because it sounds like he was pretty hands off and not really doing it. But then once he saw that, I'm assuming he stepped in.
And
he definitely
kind of gave you some
became
guidance.
like, I think to the outside eye, it was a little bit of like a helicopter parent, but he wasn't, in just that he really enjoyed riding his bike too. So like I started on the mountain bike, you know, and you're racing mountain bikes in Winter Park Resort in Colorado and all these amazing places, Vail. And so I would line up and do the junior race, and he would just kind of ride behind me, like not get in the race, but just he wanted to ride with his kid and do the bike race. But I think like there were some people that complained as like, you know, Pete has his dad in the race with him. You know, like it didn't look good, but it wasn't like that, obviously. It was just like, you know, he wanted to do a bike ride because he was up there at an event.
Yeah, why not?
And
you didn't have an earpiece in, and
exactly. No, but there was also like the competitive edge of him, is like kind of every race when we were driving home, there was the dissection of like whether you won or lost, like what happened here, like this is what you should have done, this is what you didn't do right. Like it was sometimes enraging as a child of like how much of like I just want to listen to music, and this is like a tactical debrief because he was an intense guy. He was a pro athlete. So
yeah, and you realize as you get older, right? Like almost everything your parents told you. I mean, if you have wise parents, it's just like everything is right, and you're like, damn it, you are the friends that you hang out with. You know, like it's just like every little tidbit they gave you is like crazy accurate, and to have your dad who's like so specific to what you're trying to improve on, I could imagine that be so infuriating where like you try the thing that he suggested and it works and you're like,
oh yeah. Well, you know, and being genetically similar, like I was built like him, you know, I'm more of a climber, like so he knew, he's like, do this workout as a junior, like this is what works for me, you will respond the same way, you know, like so he started out as my coach, but of course, like you can't take suggestions from your parents. Like, so my uncle would tell me the same thing and I'd do it. You know, it was
just
if my dad said it, no effing way. But yeah, at the end of the day, yeah, it was literally, I think he was kind of having a second chance too, because he's like, he had 20 years of professional experience and like he had messed up before. He knew what worked and what didn't. And he could literally help guide me a little bit of like, no, do this, you know, like, trust me, you know,
Sure.
like if he had if he had hindsight, you know, hindsight's 2020. So
very cool, man. Well, yeah, man, that's about all we got. I genuinely appreciate you spending the time with us. I've had a great time just chatting with you, man. You are a very great guest. I felt like it was just like old friends catching up. It was just oddly comfortable out the gate. So yeah, we'll definitely have to link up at your event in the future. It'd be fun.
We'll definitely see you at Pay Dirt next year. I have an international trip coming up and the finances weren't there.
Where are you headed?
I'm going to Italy in 2 weeks. I had some interesting turn of events yesterday, though. I realized that my bike frame was cracked clean through the bike I was bringing. I know, and it's I'm an ambassador for Trek here in Northern California, but it's just a really bad time. Like I'm not going to be able to get an Amonda, so looks like I'm going to bring the Madone to the Dolomites, not the but you know, it is what it is. But money wise, it didn't.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's okay.
Yeah, at least the roads in the Dolomites are extremely smooth for the most part. So I think the Madone will actually really rip there. Yeah, you'll be lugging a bit more up the hills, but it'll make you stronger for your next gravel event too.
Yeah,
silver lining.
True.
Silver lining right there.
True.
Where are you gonna
Yeah.
ride? Do you have any like passes you're checking off, or what's the?
So I'm going to a Beeler brand summit with a company that I work through just one of the brands that I work with, and it's a big group ride. They're going to have all of their ambassadors out, and they are planning the routes. In fact, I checked my email. I think they just sent them through, but I'm sure we're going to hit some of the very like famous classic passes there. Yeah, yeah. Iconic routes. So we're staying in Badia, I believe, and then after that, I rented a car because that seemed like the best. I'm going by myself. Yeah. So then from Badia, I'm going to South Tyrol, and I'm going to be there for about 10 days.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's gonna be phenomenal. Yeah, there's I did a bunch of Giro d'Italias, and I think the Dolomites are my favorite mountain range in the planet. I've trekked in Patagonia in Chile. My honeymoon was in Nepal in the Himalaya, but
Oh, wow.
the Dolomites
Nice.
are unlike any other range. You will absolutely love it. Yeah, it's really special. Yeah, make sure you ride the Jiao. That's like one of the coolest climbs. And you can link a bunch of them up. I don't know if you're there during the right time. You actually might be. There's this Passo Sella, and the Sella Ronda is an event. And it's
Is
like
this where they close all the roads down?
it's
Yeah,
only
it is
cyclists.
actually happening. It's happening that week.
It's a little mayhem,
there.
but
Yeah.
it is so cool. It's just butter smooth roads and these iconic switchbacks with these craggy peaks. It's gorgeous. And yeah,
You're talking to the right hype man here.
I
He's
know.
getting you all
I'm
excited.
Well,
jealous.
so they just extended dual citizenship to grandchildren and great grandchildren. My grandparents are born and raised in Italy, so my sister and I have been filling out our paperwork in case I ever have to flee.
So
But
she won't be coming back to the podcast. This is her way of saying
This is my goodbye.
This is it.
Yeah, I told.
I wouldn't blame you.
Going home to the motherland. I'm really excited. So yeah, thanks for that vote of confidence on the Madone. I was feeling a little bit. I seem to have really pretty bad luck. I'm recouping an injury 2 years ago. It was going to be like my biggest year on the bike so far. I was doing a sponsored ride with my girlfriend. We were going to do the Oregon Outback by ourselves and film it, and we're supposed to do pay dirt, and then I blew my knee. Right, like the week before all of it was supposed to happen, my kneecap went to the backside of my leg. So I had a couple surgeries, and I haven't returned to racing yet because I've just been trying to be patient with my body, and it's crazy how slow the recovery has been. But I get to ride my bike still, and there was a moment when I couldn't even do a pedal rotation. So yeah. Dolomites will be a good test of the old knee.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, bring your climbing gears. It's steep. It's really steep.
Yeah.
Have a big cassette on there, and yeah, I mean, yeah, we could do another podcast on knee rehab and all that. That's a big part of my history too. But yeah, it's lucky that yeah, sounds like when you can't, the knee needs to be solid, because if you do the math, it's like even if you pedal 60 RPMs, which is slow, right? But that's 60 RPMs you go for a 1 hour ride, that's 3,600 revolutions, right? So that knee needs to be doing right. It has to be smooth and flowing, but there's also no other rehab you could do you can't go to a leg press machine and do 3,600 reps, like,
Right.
so, it's, you get all sorts of blood flow in there once it is, so it's a great rehab tool too. So
I think the thing that was so complicated is it happened with COVID at a time where like doctors were spread so thin, and I had to wait 8 weeks for surgery. And so there was a ton of scar tissue in there, and that's kind of what I'm dealing with. And it sounds super crunchy. I mean, every time I do a revolution on the bike, it's like crack, 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 crack. You can hear it. But hopefully I'm just wearing that bone down a little bit over time.
Yeah.
People are like, "Oh my God, you need to get your bike tuned." It's like, no, that's just my knee.
That's my knee.
Yeah,
been there.
my knee is fully demolished in a crash 9 years ago, and it was a question on if I'd ever even walk again. And
Really?
yeah, and it's holding steady now, but it's like I can only do cycling. I can't go running or anything. It will cause instant tendonitis and all that. So the doctor said like I can finish out a pro career because the joint groove is holding up, even though the cartilage is all messed up in there. Somehow the joint groove stayed miraculously smooth. And
Wow.
I have a knee replacement in my near future, but they were like, you can don't do other stupid stuff and you can finish a pro career. So I'm just holding like the way medicine's going. It's if you can get through a few more years, I feel like we're going to have a Harry Potter pill where you just grow a new knee or something. So
I hope
that's
so.
my goal.
I
Yeah.
hope so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That makes that. I mean, it doesn't make me feel better that you have knee issues, but knees are tricky.
They are
Knees
really
real
tricky. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well, we could have a whole. I think we're gonna need to have you back anyway, man. So, I like I said, I do really appreciate you coming on, man. You've been a fun time. I'm glad we got to spend a little bit of the morning with you, and hope you have a good rest of your season, man. Excited to see you in some of those lifetime events, and hopefully we'll see you in some local Northern California events coming soon. So,
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely let me know when we're going to cross paths in person.
all right, man. That sounds like a plan. All right.
Thank you.
Have a good
Awesome
day, man.
day. Thank you.
All right. Later.